business. This afternoon, they will consider a bill expediting the permitting process for a crude oil pipeline between Canada and Texas. Also later today, extending small business programs and more work on the 2012 Interior Department spending bill. Live coverage of the House now on C-SPAN.
The House will be in order. The prayer will be offered today by our guest chaplain, the Reverend Miroslav Stelmastrik, from the Holy Family Church in Creighton, Pennsylvania.
Almighty Father, we gather here this morning to ask for your wisdom, charity, and humility. We continue to task of operating this great nation with honesty and integrity. Grant us the wisdom to act for the greater good of all citizens. Keep us humble, that we not forget who we are and why we are here. We remember the founding fathers who risked their reputations, their fortunes, and their very lives to form a nation that ensures the freedoms and opportunities that we enjoy today. We also remember those brave individuals who paid the ultimate price to protect and defend those freedoms and opportunities. Father, keep us dedicated to the people we represent. Let us not allow partnership to cause discord among our number and prevent us from completing our agenda. We depend upon your grace and mercy to allow us to continue to serve this nation with honor and integrity. We ask this in your name. Amen.
The Chair has examined the journal of the last day's proceedings and announces to the House his approval thereof, and pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 1, the journal stands approved. For what purpose does the gentleman from Alabama rise?
To address this issue, Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Clause 1, Rule 1, I demand a vote on agreeing to the Speaker's approval of the journal.
The question is on the Speaker's approval of the journal. Those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Opinion of the Chair, the ayes have it. The ayes have it, and the journal is approved.
Mr. Speaker, I demand the yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. Those in favor of a vote by the yeas and nays will rise and remain standing. A sufficient number having arisen, the yeas and nays are ordered, and pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question are postponed. The Pledge of Allegiance today will be led by the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Pitts.
We'll ask the guest in the gallery to please join us in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Without objection, the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Altmaier, is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, in the midst of one of the most contentious congressional debates in recent times, I knew just who to bring to Washington to help bring people together. And it's my great honor to welcome the Reverend Miroslav Stelmastrik, who today serves as our guest chaplain for the U.S. House of Representatives. Known simply as Father Miro, he has led the Holy Family Parish in Creighton, Pennsylvania for 26 of his 36 years in the priesthood. He has received numerous awards in recognition of his public service since he first came to the United States from Poland in 1986. And as testament to his popularity among his congregation, Mr. Speaker, I would also like to welcome the 36 Holy Family parishioners who made the trip to Washington along with Father Miro and are now seated in the gallery to witness his opening prayer today. Welcome to you all. On behalf of my colleagues in the House, welcome Father Miro and congratulations on being chosen as today's guest chaplain for the U.S. House of Representatives.
Gentleman's time has expired. The Chair will entertain up to 15 further requests for 1-minute speeches on each side of the aisle. For what purpose does the gentleman from South Carolina rise? Without objection, the gentleman from South Carolina is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, on Friday, Dr. Milton Wolfe in the Washington Times reported in the last 2 years over 2 million private sector jobs have been lost. Unemployment has increased by 1.5 percentage points. The U.S. dollar is 12% weaker, and the long-term unemployment is the worst ever on record. And sadly, the national debt has exploded by 40%. At the same time the administration pushed the failed stimulus spending here, the President urged German Chancellor Angela Merkel to do the same in her country. The Chancellor refused, and now as a result of her good judgment, Germany's economy has recovered. German unemployment levels are reduced, while over 14 million Americans do not have jobs. The President should learn a lesson from the German miracle. The solution is not for big government to keep borrowing and spending. Tax increases destroy jobs. In conclusion, God bless our troops, and we will never forget September 11th and the global war on terrorism. Our sympathy to the people of Norway in the religious extremist mass murders.
What purpose does the gentleman from Connecticut rise? Without objection, the gentleman from Connecticut is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, last night Speaker Boehner addressed the American people and said that if the President would just simply sign his debt ceiling bill, the crisis, in his words, would disappear. Actually, the opposite is true. An hour or two before his speech, Standard & Poor's rating agency issued a report saying that if the Boehner plan passed, the American bonds would be downgraded from its AAA status. Downgrade is as bad as default in terms of driving up lending costs and damaging a fragile economy that today needs all of us to work together to strengthen job creation to solve our problems. The Boehner plan calls for 3 separate votes over the next 15 months for a debt ceiling increase, exactly the kind of political instability that rating agencies are not looking for. It is time for a comprehensive, balanced solution, which the President has said he will work with the Congress to pass to get this economy moving again and create jobs. I yield back the balance of my time.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania rise? The gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Tonight, Representative Gabrielle Gifford's office is organizing a special order to recognize Border Patrol agents who were killed in the line of duty of last year. I want to thank her and her staff for working to acknowledge these dedicated servants who died serving our nation. While I won't be able to speak tonight, I wanted to take a moment to honor Agent Michael Gallagher, who grew up in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. On September 2nd last year, Agent Gallagher was on patrol near Casa Grande, Arizona. A drunken driver ran a stop sign, colliding into the patrol car and ejecting Michael from the vehicle. He served in the Border Patrol for 2 years and also served our nation in Iraq, risking his life to protect our freedom. He is dearly missed by his wife and his 2 sons. Even though he moved away, I understand that he remained a dedicated Pennsylvania sports fan. We cannot thank him and his family enough for his service. We can only honor him for dedicating his life to keeping Americans safe here at home and abroad. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from North Carolina rise?
I ask permission to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman from North Carolina is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, the clock is ticking, and we must act now on increasing our debt limit. The American people must understand that increasing the debt limit will enable us to meet obligations that have been incurred by Democratic and Republican Congresses in years past. Defaulting on these obligations will not only wreak havoc on the American people, it will weaken our overall economy. The Republicans have been given opportunity after opportunity to help craft an acceptable long-term debt reduction plan that would include a debt limit increase, but Republicans have slow-walked us to the brink of collapse. The Republican plan is to imperil Medicare and Medicaid. Republicans want to balance the budget by forcing the government away from government-sponsored Medicare and provide vouchers so seniors can purchase coverage from private insurance companies. Republicans want to shift the Medicaid responsibility to states that are already struggling to balance their budgets. Republican budget cuts will force doctors and hospitals and other health care providers to leave the Medicaid program entirely. The Republican strategy has been evolving for a long time, and now it is revealed. Shame on you. Shame on the Republican majority.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from South Carolina rise? Without objection, the gentleman from South Carolina is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask the American people to listen closely to these words, and I quote, "The fact that we are here today to debate raising America's debt limit is a sign of leadership failure. It is a sign that the U.S. government cannot pay its own bills. It is a sign that we now depend on ongoing financial assistance from foreign countries to finance our government's reckless fiscal policies. Increasing America's debt weakens us domestically and internationally. Leadership means that the buck stops here. Instead, Washington is shifting the burden of bad choices today onto the backs of our children and our grandchildren. America has a debt problem and a failure of leadership. Americans deserve better." These were remarks by Senator Barack Obama, March 2006. Mr. Speaker, the President's hypocrisy could not be more clear. May God bless America.
Gentleman yields back. What purpose does the gentleman from California rise? Gentleman from California is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, 2 years ago, the Republican in Congress campaigned on where are the jobs? Where are the jobs? Not spending cuts or living within our means. But where are the jobs? The Blue Dogs were the ones calling for responsible fiscal responsibility. Then at the end of Congress last year, President Obama compromised with the Republicans, extended the Bush tax cuts in order to try to create jobs. This gamble did not create jobs. All it's done is extended the tax break for millionaires and billionaires. We cannot play chicken, we cannot play chicken and cause our nation to default. We must lower the deficit with cuts to wasteful spending. But we can't balance the budget on the backs of seniors, the poor, by cutting Social Security and Medicare, while continuing to give tax breaks to the ultra-rich and oil companies and those who make over $250,000 a year. No taxes, no jobs. No taxes, no jobs. We must compromise. It can't be my way or the highway. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Kansas rise? Without objection, the gentleman from Kansas is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Over the past year and a half, we've seen this president take away a lot of our freedoms with big spending and a big health care plan. I want to talk about another risk to American freedom today, and that is the United Nations Arms Trade Treaty, also known as the Small Arms Treaty. I'm profoundly disappointed, but frankly not surprised that this administration is joining the United Nations in crafting this dangerous treaty designed to curtail our Second Amendment rights. Parties in this negotiation, the treaty, are talking about banning civilian possession of firearms, decreasing the ability for trade in firearms, and heavily restricting the rights of Americans to carry their firearms. Each one of these directives, if implemented, would clearly violate individual rights as ensconced in our Constitution. The Senate should not ratify this treaty. We must never turn our national sovereignty over to anyone, most especially the United Nations. As a former soldier who dearly loves his M250 caliber machine gun and loves his firearms as a civilian as well, I know that we have that right. We've got to stand to protect it, and I urge my colleagues in the Senate not to ratify this treaty. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Rhode Island rise? Without objection, the gentleman from Rhode Island is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize 3 employers in Rhode Island that are honoring and supporting the brave men and women serving our great country in the armed services. These include Amica Mutual Insurance of Lincoln, Rhode Island, Banneker Industries of North Smithfield, and the Woonsocket Middle School. These Rhode Island employers have received national recognition as finalists and semifinalists for the Secretary of Defense Employer Support Freedom Award, and were selected for this honor from a pool of more than 4,000 nominations. This award is the Department of Defense's highest recognition of employers for the extraordinary support they provide to our National Guard and Reserve members and their families. The Freedom Award is especially significant because nearly half of our nation's military is currently comprised of Guard members and reservists. These men and women have put their lives on the line because our country asked them to. Because of their service, we are able to enjoy the freedoms that we have here at home. We owe those serving our country, our veterans and their families, our utmost gratitude and respect for their great sacrifices on our behalf. I commend our Rhode Island businesses who recognize the sacrifices of our servicemen and women and their families, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Alabama rise?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman from Alabama is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, President Obama gave a speech to the nation about the debt ceiling. He said, and I quote, "I won't bore you with the details of every plan or proposal," end quote. Mr. Speaker, I say please bore us with the details. The House passed the Cut, Cap, and Balance plan that prevents a national bankruptcy by modestly cutting spending, capping the size of government, and advocating a balanced budget amendment to force Congress to act responsibly. In contrast, the President gives fine speeches, yet fails to submit a single written plan to balance the budget that can be evaluated by the American people. Mr. Speaker, I say bore us with the details. Washington's spending binge has put America $14 trillion in debt. America's future is at risk. Congress welcomes written, detailed solutions to Washington's spending binge from the President. Mr. Speaker, I reiterate, please bore us with the details. America has a right to hear them. President Obama has a duty to deliver them. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Delaware rise? Without objection, the gentleman from Delaware is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Chair, I rise today in support of efforts to find a cure for type 1 diabetes. Recently, I visited with 11-year-old Madeline Tallman from my home state of Delaware. She was here to tell her story of what it's like to live with type 1 diabetes. Madeline is faced with the lifelong challenge of checking her blood sugar levels, managing her diet, and injecting herself with insulin every single day. While research to find a cure for type 1 diabetes is progressing, people like Madeline are looking for better ways to manage their diabetes right now. An artificial pancreas has the potential to transform the lives of those with type 1 diabetes. This device automatically controls blood sugar levels around the clock, allowing patients to remain healthy until a cure is found. But before this technology can be made available to patients, the FDA must approve the next steps in the regulatory process for artificial pancreas trials. I commend the FDA for committing to publish draft guidance by December 1st. I urge the FDA to stick with that guideline. Children like Madeline have waited long enough. Thank you. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Missouri rise? Without objection, the gentleman from Missouri is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We voted last week on a plan put forward by my Republican colleagues that I strongly opposed and was rejected by the Senate because it would have ended Medicare as we know it, while preserving giveaways to big oil and corporations shipping jobs overseas. And now Speaker Boehner has introduced a new plan, which he says follows the spirit of the last plan. Rating agencies say Mr. Boehner's plan won't work. It won't prevent a ratings downgrade. It would destroy hundreds of thousands of jobs, weaken the American dollar, and raise interest rates on loans that keep families in their homes and students in school. A plan that experts tell us up front won't work is not worth voting on, let alone passing. Instead of retreating to our partisan corners and refusing to cooperate when the going gets tough, we expect leaders to get to work. This default crisis is a test of leadership, and those willing to drive our country over the economic cliff fail that test and need to get serious. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Maine rise? Without objection, the gentlelady from Maine is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in the past few weeks, the phones in my office have been ringing off the hook. The message from my constituents is clear. Please don't touch Medicare, Medicaid, or Social Security. Some are angry and some are tearful. All are sick with worry over the threat of losing benefits they have earned and depend on. Sadly, these effective programs have become targets for those who would balance the federal budget on the backs of seniors and the middle class rather than restoring tax rates for millionaires. It's unthinkable and it's unfair. I plan to do everything I can to protect these critical programs because they work. When Medicare started 45 years ago, a third of our seniors lived in poverty. Half had no health care coverage. Today, the poverty rate for seniors has been slashed, and nearly all of our seniors have access to quality care. Thanks to the Affordable Care Act, seniors won't have to worry about paying for preventative care or falling into the prescription drug donut hole. After working hard their entire lives, seniors should be able to feel confident that the system they faithfully paid into will be there for them when they need it most. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
What purpose does the gentleman from Virginia rise? Without objection, the gentleman from Virginia is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I'll never forget the day that we voted for the Clinton tax rates. We were told by all of the Republicans that this was going to cause massive job loss, an unbalanced budget, drive us into recession. Well, we know exactly what happened. More than 20 million new jobs were created. We had the lowest level of poverty, the highest expansion of the middle class, 3 straight budget surpluses, and the people at the highest tax rates took home more after-tax income than at any time in American history. It worked. And we handed over $5.6 trillion of surplus. And then when the Republicans took power again, what happened? Immediately they cut taxes, but not across the board, in a way designed primarily to benefit the wealthy. That's why the top 1% have 42% of this nation's wealth. The bottom 90%, 26%. The greatest income disparity ever. This is a manufactured crisis, Mr. Speaker. Do what Alan Greenspan recommended. Go back to the Clinton tax rates. Balance the budget. Pay for wars. Pay for tax cuts. Pay for expansion of Medicare. Meet your obligations. Don't manufacture crises. Don't drive us to deadlines where the whole world is watching and they can't understand why we act as we do. Do the right thing. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
What purpose does the gentleman from New York rise?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection. Without objection. The gentleman from New York is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In just a few hours, my Republican colleagues will bring to the floor the Jobs Outsourcers Bill of Rights. This piece of legislation is an open attack on workforce protections, a union-busting bill that will open loopholes for companies to ship our jobs, American jobs, overseas and make historic changes to workers' rights, all to serve a well-connected special interest community. This bill will allow companies to fire workers who think that they might have a better shot of supporting their families in these precarious times by banding together to negotiate with their employers. That right, the freedom of association, finds its origins in the First Amendment to the United States Constitution. Whether or not you like unions, there is no sense in making it even easier to ship our jobs overseas. If this bill becomes law, a company faced with a few organizing workers trying to form a union could close an entire United States plant and move the work to China, where sweatshop laborers will work for less than even the lowest paid non-union American workers. Actually, that's an assault on America's middle class. I would urge my colleagues to oppose this reactionary and poorly thought out legislation. With that, Mr. Speaker, I thank you and yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Kentucky rise?
With permission to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, the gentleman from Kentucky is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I know my constituents and most Americans are trying to figure out exactly what this debt ceiling crisis is. It can't be about the desire to cut spending because both sides have already agreed to more cuts than are on the table in either the Senate or the House. No, this is a politically induced crisis that the Republicans have created in order to force votes on the debt ceiling next year during a presidential campaign and weaken the president. But I hope they realize that if they weaken President Obama, they weaken the presidency as well. And if they succeed in defeating him next year, their candidate, their president, will face reduced stature in the world just as our political system will face a reduced stature in the world. We are the foundation of economic and political stability around the world, and this crisis is threatening our stature in that position. We cannot let the Republican politically induced default crisis succeed. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentlelady from New York rise? Without objection, the gentlelady from New York is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, our colleagues on the other side of the aisle have been in the majority for a full 29 weeks, and they still have not addressed the #1 priority of the American people, jobs. The Republican majority has instead used the time and energy that should have been focused on jobs to manufacture a crisis that could very well destroy the full faith and credit of our nation. What makes this made-up crisis so undignified is the other side has taken the American people hostage to their radical plan of placing the burden of deficit reduction on the backs of poor, working poor, and middle-class struggling families, while asking absolutely nothing of the most fortunate amongst us. Why, Mr. Speaker, do those who have done very well in America have been asked to do so little for the country that made their success possible? The Republican-led 112th Congress has totally ignored the job crisis and actually managed to create another. The 112th Congress owes the American people an apology for continuing to waste their time. Where are the jobs? We owe the American people real job creation, and I yield back. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Time's expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Minnesota rise? Without objection, gentleman from Minnesota is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to tell my colleagues what my constituents are saying. Simply stop playing games. We all come to this job with certain ideas, values, and principles, but that doesn't mean we get to let our ideology dictate facts. Failure to pay our bills will have a catastrophic effect on our still recovering economy. It's as simple as that. This isn't a question about enabling future deficits. The federal government needs to cover our promises it's made to our seniors, to our soldiers in the field, to our veterans, to our states, and to our creditors at home and abroad. We need to pay our bills. The need to address our debt is every bit as serious as the need to avoid a default. But we need a balanced approach and shared sacrifice. We cannot balance the budget on the backs of working and middle-class Americans while simply refusing to ask corporations and billionaires to pay 1 penny more. We cannot ignore the facts, and allowing our nation to default is in no way the way to fix our budget problems. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does the gentlelady from North Carolina rise?
Permission to address the House for 1 minute, Mr. Speaker.
Without objection, gentlelady from North Carolina is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our record debt of $14.3 trillion is growing, and it poses a direct threat to our national security, our economy, and our children's future. The American people deserve real leadership right now, not politics as usual. The President's Bipartisan Deficit Commission called the House-passed Path to Prosperity a, quote, serious, honest, straightforward approach to addressing our nation's enormous fiscal challenges. End quote. On the contrary, the Democratic co-chair of the Commission, Erskine Bowles, recently criticized the President's fiscal plan introduced on April 13 by stating that, quote, when you compare it to the Ryan plan and the Commission's plan, it really doesn't stabilize the debt. The debt as a percentage of GDP gets up to around 77% and never gets to primary balance, end quote. If President Obama and the Democrat leaders of the Senate wish to take solving our spending-driven debt crisis seriously, the solution is simple. Washington must stop spending it doesn't have. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida rise?
Address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection, gentleman from Florida is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, America earned the name the land of opportunity because anyone willing to work hard and play by the rules can make it here. Well, our families still work hard. They still play by the rules, and yet so many are barely scraping by. So they send us to Washington to fight for them. They can't afford lobbyists. They only have us. Today we will consider Republican legislation that is a textbook example of why too often the special interests win out over the public interests. H.R. 2587 gives corporations a green light to send jobs overseas if their employees simply ask for a decent salary or better hours. This bill is based on the premise that executives can negotiate multi-million-dollar bonuses for themselves, but if American workers exercise their rights, their jobs will be on the next plane to China. That's the majority's answer to outsourcing of American jobs. If rights of American workers get in the way of corporate profits, then it's time to do away with those rights. Let's stand up and fight to keep jobs here. Let's fight for American families. Let's defeat H.R. 2587.
Right.
I yield back.
What purpose does the gentleman from Michigan rise? Without objection, gentleman from Michigan is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As we're on the verge of facing government default, there are several proposals on the table for us as members of Congress to consider. And in my opinion, none of these proposals go far enough. Yes, they cut money in hopes of reducing our deficit and reducing our debt. But here's what they don't do. They don't cut, they don't cap, and they don't forgive student loan debt. Look, people, we want to create jobs. We want our families to have financial security. We need to help them get out of personal debt. And the most powerful way to get this economy moving again and to get our people the education they need is to help forgive certain student loan debt. I yield back my time.
Gentleman yields back. What purpose does the gentleman from Florida rise?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. By the direction of the Committee on Rules, I call up House Resolution 370 and ask for its immediate consideration.
The clerk will report the resolution.
House Calendar Number 60, House Resolution 370. Resolved that at any time after the adoption of this resolution, the Speaker may, pursuant to Clause 2B of Rule 18, declare the House resolved into the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union for consideration of the bill H.R. 1938, to direct the President to expedite the consideration and approval of the construction and operations of the Keystone XL oil pipeline and for other purposes. The first reading of the bill shall be dispensed with. All points of order against consideration of the bill are waived. General debate shall be confined to the bill and shall not exceed 1 hour, with 30 minutes equally divided and controlled by the Chair and Ranking Minority Member of the Committee on Energy and Commerce, 20 minutes equally divided and controlled by the Chair and Ranking Minority Member of the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure, and 10 minutes equally divided and controlled by the Chair and Ranking Minority Member of the Committee on Natural Resources. After general debate, the bill shall be considered for amendment under the 5-minute rule. It shall be in order to consider as an original bill for the purpose of amendment under the 5-minute rule, the amendment in the nature of a substitute recommended by the Committee on Energy and Commerce now printed in the bill. The committee amendment in the nature of a substitute shall be considered as read. All points of order against the committee amendment in the nature of a substitute are waived. No amendment to the committee amendment in the nature of a substitute shall be in order except those printed in the report of the Committee on Rules accompanying this resolution. Each such amendment may be offered only in the order printed in the report, may be offered only by a member designated in the report, shall be considered as read, shall be debatable for the time specified in the report, equally divided and controlled by the proponent and an opponent, shall not be subject to amendment, and shall not be subject to a demand for division of the question in the House or in the Committee of the Whole. All points of order against such amendments are waived. At the conclusion of consideration of the bill for amendment, the committee shall rise and report the bill to the House with such amendments as may have been adopted. Any member may demand a separate vote in the House on any amendment adopted in the Committee of the Whole to the bill or to the committee amendment in the nature of a substitute. The previous question shall be considered as ordered on the bill and amendments thereto to final passage without intervening motion except one motion to recommit with or without instructions.
For the purpose of debate only, I yield the customary 30 minutes.
Gentleman will suspend. Gentleman will suspend. Gentleman from Florida is recognized for 1 hour.
For the purpose of debate only, I yield the customary 30 minutes. The gentleman from Florida, Mr. Hastings, got a nice Florida colorful tie on today. Pending which I yield myself such time as I may consume. During consideration of this resolution, all time yielded is for the purpose of debate only. Mr. Speaker, I ask for unanimous consent. All members have 5 legislative days to revise or extend their remarks.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to support this rule and the underlying bill. House Resolution 370 provides for a structured rule for consideration of House Resolution 1938, the North American Made Energy Security Act. The rule makes 11 of the 13 amendments submitted to the Rules Committee in order for robust debate here on the floor of the House of Representatives. All 11 amendments made in order are Democrat amendments, and this legislation passed out of Energy and Commerce with a bipartisan support, gathering yes votes from 6 Democrats on the committee, including the former chairman, Mr. Dingell. This bill has moved through the committee process with bipartisan support because it's not require anything in the extraordinary to do. Distilled in its simplest form, it directs the President to make a decision. It does not prescribe his decision one way or another. It just simply asks him to act, say yes or say no. After nearly 3 years of review, study, and comment, the President would have to decide whether or not to issue a presidential permit permitting the Keystone XL pipeline. This bill does not allow any corners to be cut, any environmental considerations to be glossed over. In fact, not only has it required an environmental impact statement to be executed, but several supplemental statements have been performed as well. Furthermore, upon receipt of the final environmental impact statement, but not later than November 1st, the President still has an additional 30 days to weigh the evidence and make up his mind. After nearly 3 years, he does not have to approve the project nor disapprove the project. He simply has to make a decision. And what exactly is at stake? What hinges upon the approval or disapproval of this monumental infrastructure project? American job creation, overdue economic growth, and increased national energy security. TransCanada believes that the approval of the construction of the Keystone XL pipeline will create about 20,000 shovel-ready construction and manufacturing jobs, adding about $6.5 billion in personal income for those workers. It injects more than $20 billion in private sector investment in the U.S. economy. It generates more than $585 million in new taxes for state and communities along the pipeline route. It pays more than $5.2 billion in property taxes during the life of the pipeline. Undeniably strengthens America's energy security by enabling to expand the exportation of 830,000 barrels of oil a day from our U.S. Neighbor and ally instead of importing it from other unfriendly sources. In fact, according to the United States Department of State, if the pipeline is not approved, quote, the U.S. would not receive a reliable and cost-efficient, secure source of crude oil from Canada and would remain dependent upon unstable foreign oil supplies from the Middle East, Africa, Mexico, and South America, end of quote. Once again, Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of this rule and the underlying legislation. Relevant committees of jurisdiction have worked to provide us with a bipartisan bill, which at its core is quite simple. It simply directs the administration to make a decision on America's energy and security and job creation. I encourage my colleagues to vote yes on the rule and yes on the underlying bill, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Florida, Mr. Webster reserves. The gentleman from Florida, Mr. Hastings, is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my friend for yielding and compliment him on his sunshine tie over there with all of that wonderful Florida speak out. You too, Mr. Speaker. You're kind of looking pretty good with that colors. We must be taking a picture or something around here today. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in strong opposition to the rule for H.R. 1938, and I feel that much like the majority's previous legislation attempts to increase offshore drilling, this backwards-looking, dirty energy bill will not lower the price of gasoline for the average American today, tomorrow, or in the future. It manages, this bill does, to completely ignore the pressing need to develop clean, sustainable energy. In fact, only the large oil companies will benefit from this bill. In its very application for the Keystone XL pipeline expansion, TransCanada
indicated that it believes this expansion will actually raise oil and gasoline prices. The pipeline expansion connects Canadian oil to the Gulf of Mexico, making it possible to ship tar sands oil out onto the world market for the first time. The pipeline will allow TransCanada to bypass the Midwest, reducing what the company called, and I quote, price discounting, unquote, in the Midwest due to what it considers an, I quote, oversupply, unquote. The oil will run past Montana, right through Texas, ignore Nebraska completely, and wave goodbye to the United States while it rides right out of the country. Providing Canadian oil companies access to this new market is the only reason to want to expand the pipeline. TransCanada's application actually indicates that it expects the price of crude oil to increase by $6.55 per barrel in the Midwest and $3 everywhere else after the expansion is completed. Ultimately, the expansion would lead to a windfall for Canadian oil companies of between $2 billion and $3.9 billion by the year 2013, while increasing the cost of gasoline for hardworking Americans between 10 and 20 cents per gallon. The people of the United States will bear all the risks of an onshore oil spill and reap absolutely none of the benefits. Let there be no mistake about this. The risk of an oil spill from these tar sand pipelines is very real. The oil is so much more corrosive than traditional crude oil that even Canada has yet to approve a dedicated pipeline conveying it to its coast. The oil eats away at the pipelines, compromising them and leading to frequent spills. For example, the very pipeline for which the majority bill hastens expansion suffered 12 spills in its very first year. The first spill in June 2010 occurred only 1 month after the pipeline went into operation. Just this last May, the Keystone spewed 21,000 gallons of oil in North Dakota. Already, Mr. Speaker, Americans are paying the price for a project which delivers to them absolutely no benefit. A similar pipeline recently discharged 840,000 gallons of oil into Michigan's Kalamazoo River, causing one of the largest oil spills ever in the Midwest. On July 1st, a pipeline broke and spewed approximately 42,000 gallons of oil into the Yellowstone River. Between 1990 and 2005, there were over 4,700 related oil spills. The Keystone Pipeline expansion would expand the risk of a BP-sized oil spill from the Gulf of Mexico to front yards across the heart of this country. After its initial impact statement received harsh and extensive criticism, the State Department issued a supplemental draft statement. The period for public comment on that draft closed on June 6th. The State Department is currently reviewing the comments it received in response to this second statement, and a process expected to take several months. Nonetheless, the State Department has reasonably indicated that a decision can be expected by the end of the year. Yet this bill would require a decision within 30 days of the issuance of the final environmental impact statement and no later than November the 1st. Without further justification, Republicans seem to think it necessary to shortcut the process, compromising the discussion and its analysis. There are still many questions that need to be answered regarding the pipeline, including information on greenhouse gas emissions, safety, alternative routes, and environmental justice considerations. This year, the Republican majority has offered 3 offshore drilling bills that have utterly failed to preserve and protect our environment. It's clear that my friends in the majority are more concerned with keeping big oil companies happy than implementing a workable energy policy for the future. Instead of crafting policies to ensure that the growing sustainable energy industry is filled with American workers, the majority wants to enrich Canadian oil companies at a cost of America's economy and environment. These kinds of dirty energy bills keep us mired in the muck of fossil fuels when what we need to do is focus on making our energy use more efficient. We need to develop the next generation of clean energy technology. Unfortunately, Republicans seem intent on enabling our country's oil addiction. This is not good policy today and will certainly be not good policy in the future. Mr. Speaker, I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Florida, Mr. Hastings, reserves. The gentleman from Florida, Mr. Webster, is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Barton.
The gentleman from Texas is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank my friend from Florida and for the time. I ask unanimous consent to revise and extend.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I am puzzled by Congressman Hastings' remarks in opposition to the rule. This is a very fair rule. The Rules Committee received 13 amendments from the minority. They made in order 11 of those. One amendment was not germane, and the other amendment by Mr. Markey would have restricted the oil to the United States and not allowed any of the product to be refined and sent overseas possibly, and that's a function that the Rules Committee felt should be a market function and not prohibited. So 11 amendments by the minority were made in order. This is a bill that came out of my committee, the Energy and Commerce Committee, on a bipartisan vote. All the Republicans supported it, and between a fourth and a third of the Democrats supported it. The underlying thesis of the bill is pretty straightforward. Under current law, you're supposed to make a decision on pipeline permits between 180 and 90 days. The Obama administration, EPA, has had 2 years on their watch and 1 year under the Bush administration. EPA has had over 3 years, if you count towards this September, next month, or right after August, and has not made a decision. The bill says make a decision. Make a decision. There is an existing pipeline. The Keystone Pipeline would connect an existing pipeline that ends in the Midwest to the Gulf Coast. It would go to Congressman Poe's district in Port Arthur and go over into Louisiana. It would create tens of thousands of jobs in construction. It would bring approximately 1 million barrels of oil per day into the United States to provide competition for existing oil supplies. It would be refined in U.S. refineries, and most of the product, if not all, would probably be consumed by U.S. consumers. This is a good bill. This is a good rule. I would ask that we support the rule and then listen to the debate and hopefully decide to support the underlying bill. I want to thank my friend from Florida for the time, and I would yield back the balance of my time to Congressman Webster.
The gentleman yields back.
Mr. Speaker, if I could engage Mr. Barton just a moment, I'll yield myself 30 seconds before yielding.
Or if I have time, I'm happy to yield.
Yeah, I just am curious to know if this will cause the price of gasoline to go down in your judgment.
In my judgment, if the gentleman would yield,
yeah.
In my judgment, providing more fuel supply for our refineries would liken the possibility that prices would go down.
Likely possibility. I'll take that pretty much as a no.
No,
Thank
it's a
you.
yes. Take it as a yes.
All right.
Competition drives prices down.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm very pleased to yield to my good friend from Virginia, Mr. Connolly, 2 minutes.
Gentleman from Virginia is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my colleague and my friend from Florida. Mr. Speaker, I rise in opposition to this rule, and I rise in opposition on substantive grounds. The Rules Committee approved for our consideration here on the floor every germane amendment but one, the Markey-Connolly amendment, which would have required a simple certification that the bulk of this oil to be transported by this proposed pipeline be for and designated for domestic consumption. We hear a lot of rhetoric about the need to expand American production and or access to secure oil to lessen our dependence on foreign suppliers. That indeed is a noble goal. It's one in which I share. But not at any price, and I don't want to be sold a pig in a poke. The fact that the Rules Committee would not put that amendment on this floor, going into content rather than procedure, finding it germane but still not allowing a fair debate and its consideration on this floor, I think gives the lie to the intent behind the extension of this pipeline. This oil is not for domestic consumption. This oil is for foreign export. It has very little to do with domestic oil supply, or it might have very little to do with domestic oil supply. A simple requirement that the preponderance of it be for domestic supply, I think would have made prudent domestic policy, and I think would have allowed a fair and interesting debate here on the floor of the House as to what the real intention of this pipeline is. And so I say to the American public, I urge you not to be fooled by propositions from the other side that this is going to be good for American consumers. This is going to be good for Chinese consumers. With that, I yield back to the distinguished ranking member of the Rules Committee.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Florida, Mr. Webster, is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Poe.
Gentleman from Texas is recognized for 3 minutes.
I thank the gentleman from Florida for yielding. Also admire the gentleman from Florida with the exotic tie and his comments. But I stand in support of the rule and, of course, the underlying bill. The rule is a fair rule. I represent Southeast Texas. We still think we're the energy capital of the world. The pipeline from Canada will go down into Southeast Texas, Port Arthur, Texas, which actually has high unemployment. The pipeline will go to the refineries. The refineries will be able to expand and hire refinery workers to refine that crude oil. I think that's a good idea. The Canadian oil sands will be able to produce 175 barrels of oil reserves, second only to Saudi Arabia. The idea that we need to move away from Middle Eastern oil is a good idea. Maybe we ought to support our allies, our loyal allies that are in a stable country. A medium-sized pipeline, just to give you some statistics, pumps about 150,000 barrels a day. To replace that, you would have to have 750 trucks a day or a 75-car train every day. Pipelines are the safest way to transport crude oil. 75% of the accidents occur with a third party causing the accident to the pipeline. But if we don't make a decision, that's what we're asking the President to do. And as my friend from Florida knows, being former judges, we made decisions. It didn't take us 3 years to make a decision. You get the evidence, you make a ruling. And it's taken, I think, the federal government way too long to make a decision on this issue. But failure to act, delay, 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 is tantamount to a no. And eventually, the Canadians will sell that crude oil that they have to China or other buyers. So I think it's quite important that we go ahead and make a decision, have the federal government rule on this issue. You know, there are 500,000 miles of pipelines in the United States. About half of those run through Texas. I'm told that a third of all those pipelines run through my congressional district. We have a lot of pipelines. And I think it's important that we continue to try to take care of ourselves, use a safe product from Canada, make sure that all the requirements, environmental requirements, are imposed in making this pipeline, but create jobs in America, build the pipeline, create jobs in Southeast Texas for Americans in the refinery business, because we still rely on crude oil. And last, I would say, I agree, we need to eventually have green energy, but we don't have that now. So if we cut off all of this, what will we use?
30 more seconds.
I urge support of the rule. I urge the adoption of this legislation so that we can move forward with construction, American jobs, and deal fairly on the issue of energy reliance upon ourselves, and getting that from our allies instead of third world dictators like Chavez and the Middle East. And I will yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Florida, Mr. Hastings, is recognized.
Very much, Mr. Speaker. I would say to my friend Judge Poe that we have to start, and we are starting, the green energy movement. I readily understand the economic impact on Port Arthur, the state of Texas, and I also am deeply concerned for the ranchers in the Midwest, specifically Montana, Nebraska, those states, North Dakota, that are bypassed, and the possibility of their oil and gas costing more is at the least disturbing. But I do want to share a report that was formulated regarding tar sands and their potential by the IHS Cambridge Energy Research Association. And it's under the aegis Growth in the Canadian Oil Sands. What it says, and I would urge my colleague from Florida to know that I'm the last speaker, so when I finish, I don't know how many more speakers you have. Tar sands, which are also known as oil sands, are a combination of clay, sand, water, and bitumen, a heavy black asphalt-like hydrocarbon that cannot extracted through a well cannot be extracted through a well like conventional oil. It's estimated that Canada's economically recoverable tar sands deposits in Alberta total 173 billion barrels, making Canada, as Judge Pope pointed out, second after Saudi Arabia in oil reserves. Producing fuel from tar sands has significant environmental impacts. Extracting tar sands bitumen and upgrading it to synthetic crude oil produces roughly 3 times greater greenhouse gas emissions than producing conventional oil on a per unit basis. Tar sands development also destroy boreal forests and wetlands and wildlife habitat, kills migratory birds, and degrades water quality and air quality. That said, tar sands oil contains on average 11 times more sulfur, 11 times more nickel, 6 times more nitrogen, and 5 times more lead than conventional oil. These pollutants are harmful to human health, causing lung and respiratory problems such as asthma and bronchitis, and the metals found in tar sands are neurotoxic. The pollutants released by refining tar sands causes acid rain, smog, and haze, and communities living near these refineries report elevated levels of cancer. Mr. Speaker, the bill before us overrides current law for the sake of padding the pockets of oil companies' CEOs and fails to create significant sustainable jobs for the average American in the growing sustainable energy sector. This bill will never become law and is once again a waste of our time. I oppose this unnecessary, opportunistic legislation for many of the same reasons that I've made it very clear, as have others. But I have made the vow to be the last man standing in the fight against expanding offshore drilling, and I may be among those that will continue to stand against transborder tar sands being transmitted here for purposes of going out onto the world market and not allowing for any reduction in the cost of gasoline in the United States of America. I urge my colleagues to vote no on the rule and the underlying legislation, and I'm at this time, Mr. Speaker, prepared to yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Florida, Mr. Hastings, yields back the balance of his time. The gentleman from Florida, Mr. Webster, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This rule provides for an ample open debate, allowing our colleagues from across the aisle to offer legislative proposals to this bill. Furthermore, the underlying bill addresses two critical concerns. If you listen to the speeches made in this chamber every day and every member of this House, unemployment and dependence on OPEC oil. As I have stated, 20,000 shovel-ready jobs can be created with the approval of this infrastructure project. Approval of the Keystone XL pipeline will also serve to increase oil imports from our friend and neighbor in the north, Canada, while driving down the dependence on oil from countries which are frankly they do not share our ideas about democracy and freedom. Most importantly, this bill does not force the President to approve this job-creating infrastructure project. It simply asks him and requires of him to make up his mind after coordinating all of the appropriate stakeholders and coordinating with them. I ask my colleagues to join me today in voting in favor of this rule and passage of the underlying bill. I yield back the balance of my time, and I move the previous question on the resolution.